It began in the quiet folds of early spring, when the frost still clung stubbornly to the edges of the forest, and the mornings were painted with a silver mist. Amelia Hart, a wildlife photographer who had relocated to a remote cabin on the edge of Cedar Hollow, had been rising at dawn each day to capture images of deer moving through the fog, foxes darting along the brush, and the occasional owl still perched sleepily on a branch. But one morning, something entirely unexpected stepped into her frame, something so surreal that it was as if the forest itself had decided to rewrite its own rules. At first, she thought it was simply a small bear cub. Its gait was unsteady, its fur thick and matted like the forest floor, and its eyes, astonishingly human-like, seemed to study her as much as she studied it. But as the creature edged closer, its curious features revealed a startling form. A small Bigfoot, no taller than a toddler, with hands and feet proportionately large for its body, a head crowned with shaggy brown hair, and a face that seemed somewhere between ape and child. Amelia froze. Here was the legendary cryptid that entire generations swore lived deep in the mountains. But a baby? Alone? She resisted the urge to approach. Instead, Amelia remained still, her camera lowered, letting the creature decide the distance. The infant Bigfoot seemed oddly relaxed. It examined her cabin, sniffed the morning air, and after a few minutes, wandered back into the trees. Amelia assumed this would be a once-in-a-lifetime sighting. But the next morning, just as dawn broke, the little figure returned, and the next morning after that, and the next. Over the days that followed, an unspoken ritual formed. At first, the infant would linger at the edge of the clearing, hiding partially behind a stump. Then slowly, curiosity drew him closer. Amelia began setting out small offerings, slices of apple, a few berries, and once, a shiny riverstone she thought he might like. He accepted them in silence, simply blinking at her with those deep, thoughtful eyes before retreating into the forest like a fleeting dream. Weeks passed, and Amelia's wonder began to mingle with purpose. The sightings lit a spark within her. This wasn't just a rare encounter. It felt like a gentle invitation from the wild itself. A reminder that mystery and connection still coexisted in a world that often pretended everything was known. She started documenting their meetings, sketching his outline when she didn't dare raise her camera, journaling his behaviors, the way his fur rippled in the wind, the way he was drawn to water, the way his head tilted when she spoke softly. Then, one morning in mid-May, the rhythm changed. The mist that day was thicker than usual, the sun only a faint suggestion behind the veil of clouds. Amelia stood at her porch, expecting to see the small silhouette emerge from the spruce. But instead, she heard a rustle heavier than the infant's usual arrival. The little Bigfoot appeared, but he was not alone. Cradled awkwardly in his arms was a bundle. No, not a bundle, a creature. It was a small fawn, clearly injured, its leg bent at a wrong angle. The infant Bigfoot looked at Amelia with something she could only describe as pleading. He stepped forward, hesitant but determined, and gently placed the fawn at the edge of her porch, then backed away as if entrusting her with the responsibility. Amelia's breath caught. In that instant, she realized this was no random habit of visiting. He had been building trust. Day after day, he had learned she would not harm him, that she was a friend. And now, faced with a problem he could not solve alone, he had come to the one human he believed might help. Without wasting time, Amelia knelt by the fawn. Her hands worked quickly, years of field experience guiding her as she assessed the injury. It wasn't hopeless, but it was serious. She carried the fawn inside, wrapped it gently in blankets, and began tending to it. Outside, the Bigfoot infant hovered at the doorway, shifting his weight nervously. His eyes followed every movement, and when she finally looked up and gave him a reassuring nod, something in his expression softened, relief, trust, maybe even gratitude. Over the following days, Amelia cared for the fawn, feeding it, cleaning its wound, and keeping it safe. Every morning, the infant returned, watching through the window or sitting patiently on the porch, as though making sure his friend was still receiving help. She spoke to him in low tones, telling him about the progress, about how strong the little deer was becoming. She wasn't sure he understood the words, but she believed he understood the meaning. Eventually, the fawn healed enough to walk. On the morning of release, Amelia opened the door to find the infant already waiting. Together, they led the fawn into the clearing. The young Bigfoot stepped forward, sniffed the once-injured leg, and then gave a small, almost imperceptible sound, a cross between a coo and a hum. The fawn bolted into the trees, disappearing into the green shadows. The infant stood for a moment, watching the path it had taken, then turned toward Amelia. For the first time, he came close enough that she could see the fine details of his tiny face, the fuzz along his cheeks, the gentle intelligence in his eyes. And then, as always, he left. The visits became less frequent after that. Perhaps his family had moved deeper into the wilderness, or perhaps the purpose that had drawn him had been fulfilled. But Amelia never forgot the way he had crossed the invisible line between species, between myth and reality, to ask for help. It reminded her of something she had always suspected but had never quite witnessed. The wild understands kindness. Trust is not bound by language, or species, or science. It is a bridge built in silence, step by step, morning by morning. Months later, when the first autumn leaves began to scatter across her porch, Amelia would sometimes glance toward the trees at dawn, half hoping to see that small figure emerge from the mist again. And though he never did, she kept the memory alive, not as a story of cryptids or strange happenings, but as a testament to the quiet miracles that happen when one chooses to meet the unknown not with fear, but with openness. Because, in the end, that infant Bigfoot had brought her something far greater than an injured fawn. He had brought proof that wonder still walks among us,